Wholeness and balanced vibrations, and welcome to today's transmission, which is a merging of reality transurfing teachings with a lot of the Vedic consciousness teachings in what I've been trained with. So before I start, please like and subscribe to my channel below and hit the bell notification so that you are notified on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. As I've said, Mondays and Fridays will be very much teaching lessons, and Wednesdays will be a wisdom Wednesday of meditation. If you even have a look at the description below, you will be able to claim a free energized painting, and you can also book yourself a free discovery call with me in line for coaching with me, and that is in the link tree description below, and there's a little tag that says discovery call. And there are various other things that I offer, like breathwork sessions as a one-to-one, and an energy transmission, which is a silent energy transmission, which is also a one-to-one. But all of these are all included in my coaching packages. At the moment, if you have a look in the link tree, there is an online course that is half price, and it's called Coming Back to You. And it'll take you about 6 months to do the online course, but at any time during the course you are allowed to have a free one-to-one session with me as one coaching session, which is included in the price. So with all that said, let's start on today's transmission, and a little bit of a recap of what we spoke about in our last session, which is on Monday, which is to do with the different states of waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and then we go into the fourth state, which is the Turiya state, which is the non-duality state, and then we go into the supreme non-duality state, which is beyond the Turiya state, where we're really in contact with our subjective self. And so really we were walking through a dream and entering the awareness point, because that's the point which is the center of our being, and we're actually saying at that point, I see myself, I see my reality. And this almost lucid dreaming state allows the capacity for you to start to control a situation, because it's called the being awake, conscious dreaming state. And you actually see in that state that you are a film character who normally is asleep in the waking life. And you see that you're in the film, in that carried by the flow of your script. And so when you're carried by the flow of your script, you're not actually in control of what's happening in your life. It takes control of you. And your mind is not your own, because your attention is not your own, because the attention of the mind is constantly drifting into the outer or the inner screen. And so in being aware in your awakened state, and like the other characters who are fast asleep, you start to see yourself and you see your reality. And in this way, you can consciously control your will, which you could never before. And if I can describe this reality as a way of how I personally see it, I see it as a film script where I'm the detached observer of my life. So even my lens of focus, even when I'm focusing on the surroundings, my lens of focus is taken away from this reality that I see. It's almost like I've learned to defocus my eyes. As I say, I see myself, I see my reality. and I view everything from that detached observer space. And you start to, in being aware in this awakened state, you start to actually, because you start to control your will, you actually even start to see things that you never saw before. This script is an outer script, normally, and you're led by it. And that plays out into the film, inside which you are one of the characters. But you as the self, the big soul self, is your true attention. And you cannot stay in the awareness center for long enough as a normal human being to stay in the energy of the true soul self. And it's like exercising a muscle. You constantly have to exercise this muscle and learn to bring yourself back to your center point, to yourself, again and again and again. And in this way, the dream characters inside the script are different because they're not awake and they're not aware. So they don't have any willpower or freedom of being because they are controlled by the script. They're still existing within the matrix of fear, control, pendulums, so on and so forth. They have no isness of beingness. And they're almost, I would describe them as robotic mannequins of the system. And so it's very, very important to hold your attention in your awareness center continuously by focusing your attention to what you pay attention to is what manifests. And so whenever you're feeling you're out of sync, keep bringing yourself back to your center. And this means waking up when something happens around you, within you, and externally to you. Am I awake? Am I aware? I see myself. I see my reality. And the outer reality is when something happens and you wake up. And the inner reality is before you do anything, you wake up. I'm going to repeat that. The outer reality is that when something happens, you wake up. The inner reality is before you do anything, you wake up. But the central point, the central reality, the central screen is you are already awake and aware. And one whose self is the universe, knowing fully that all is my own expansion from my own center point, as all is self, brings one into a state of divinity, a divine state of unconditional love, even when they're flowing through different cognitions or circumstances in their life, because their state of being is held within the space of divinity. It is not about the circumstances, it is about your state of being. And so once again then, the ultimate reality is simultaneously transcendent and immanent, constituting the very substance of your moment to moment experience in the eternal now. And that eternal now experience yet it manifests into the timeless ground upon which it unfolds. Like, how beautiful is that? To be in that state of eternal bliss, of eternal Sat, Chit, Anand. Sat is truth. So you're being in your eternal truth. Chit is consciousness. You're being in that eternal consciousness. Anand is bliss. You're always blissful because you know you're in that central screen. You're not in the outer screen and you're not in the inner screen. You're existing in the central screen because you see yourself and you see your reality. And if I explain that slide in terms of reality transurfing, our perception of ourselves and our environment are often far from our truth. And that distortion that happens is caused by the different slides that appear in your film script. For example, if you're worried about anything that causes you to experience a feeling of inferiority, darkness, shadows, because you think that others are disapproving of it or disliking this situation, or you're disliking it. When you are interacting with people, you then bring that energy of inferiority, of that inferiority complex, slide into your projector. And so that energy manifests as a distorted light. And so the purity with which you bring yourself into each slide matters. State of being, not the circumstances. And it's so easy to get pulled by the outer circumstances, which then come into your slide. And this is how we build up layers and layers and layers in our world, which are often other people's conceptions of what we should be, or other people's beliefs even. And so I ask you today to really take a look at yourself of how much are you carrying that's not even your own. And so this slide that we talk about in reality transurfing is a distorted picture of reality that's actually existing in your mind as a thought. And as a rule, a negative slide is generated by unity of the heart and mind, which is why it is manifested into a physical reality, because you believe it and you make it happen. And that's when our worst expectations tend to come true, because we're speaking into it, we're acting them out, we're believing them. And these negative slides, however, can be transformed into positive slides, and they can work for you in an instant. If you intentionally create a positive slide, it is capable of miraculously transforming your layer of your world. Now remember, I spoke about layers earlier on. Everyone perceives their world according to their level of consciousness, which creates a particular layer in their world that they are seeing through. That creates your lens of perception, your filter. And it's really constantly having to clear your lens so that your layer of world is also clear. And so a target slide is a mental picture of the goal as if it's already been reached. And that goal already exists in the alternative space, the space of variance. So can we look through the lens, through the filter of only seeing our target slide, nothing else. Keep focusing on your goal, only on your goal. And the systemic visualization of the slide then leads to the materialization of that corresponding sector in the alternative space. Because in the alternative space, it is a specific alternative of any given event that exists at every single point of what was, what is, and what will be. So for the sake of clarity, we can assume that the alternative space consists of all the scripts and all the scenery. But what I'm asking you today is to focus on your target script and your target slide, particularly within that script. And that slide has a particular scenery, particular smells, visuals, tastes, or all of the sense perceptions. And this is how you will see through a clear lens the clarity of the layer of your world. Because every living being materializes a given sector of the alternative space with their thought energy. And that thought energy creates the layer of their world. Simple. All of these layers are simply like layers of an onion lying on top of each other. And in this way, every living being contributes to the shaping of his or her reality. You show two people the same thing, and you'll have two different opinions. The individual creates the layer of their personal world, their separate reality with their mental outlook. This reality acquires a certain hue depending on the person's attitude. So metaphorically speaking, certain weather conditions are set. Morning freshness in the sunshine, or it's cloudy and raining. Ask two people to look outside their window in the morning and you'll get two different opinions, depending on their thought processes. Individual reality is created by two means, the physical and the metaphysical. In other words, a person builds their world with their thoughts and their actions. Here, thought forms play the leading role because they are responsible for creating a significant portion of the material problems a person has to battle with for a lot of the time. And this is where reality transurfing really deals exclusively with the metaphysical aspect that exists in the alternatives flow. The alternatives flow space information is static. It's like a matrix. Everything's there. The information structure is organized almost like interconnected chains, and the alternatives flow is then generated by causal relationships. So if you have a restless mind, you're constantly going to experience the pendulum, tremors of the pendulum, things coming up, problems, in an attempt to keep the situation under control. In the majority of cases, the mind's willful decisions are no more useful than slapping your hands about in water. Nothing happens because most problems, particularly minor ones, actually resolve themselves if you don't put any intention to them. They simply just disappear within the alternatives flow. And the main reason why one should not actively resist the flow is because doing so You're basically wasting a huge amount of energy, and you're creating more of a resistance with your insistence, which is creating a bigger pendulum. And that's why the pendulum's flow takes the path of least resistance. Resisting the flow generates more problems. So a powerful intellect is of no purpose if the solution already exists in the alternative flow. It's already there. If you do not get involved in the refinements and just simply allow the alternative flow to take its course, the solution, and what is more an optional solution, will present itself. Because it already exists. The alternative space contains everything, and it's most likely the least energy consuming alternative, which is the one that will ultimately be materialized, because the flow is happening. You see, nature never likes to waste any energy. Nature knows. Nature holds the highest wisdom. And so I ask you to really focus, without insistence and resistance, on your target. And there's a lovely quote I read a little while ago from Alexis Sanderson, and I'd like to share that quote with you. The absolute autonomy of a non-individual consciousness which alone exists, containing the whole of reality within the bliss of the dynamic I nature, projecting space, time, and the interrelating fluxes of subjective and objective phenomena as its content and form, manifesting itself in this spontaneous extroversion through the pre-cognitive impulse of Icha, which is will, of Jnana, which is your cognition or your level of consciousness, and of Kriya, which is the action. And so Icha, Kriya, Jnana are the three radical modes of infinite power: your will, your level of consciousness, and the action you're going to take. And so I'd like to leave you with this, as I've merged that Eastern philosophy, spirituality, with the quantum field, using reality transurfing as my tool, and really keep coming back to your center, because that's your power point. That's your true compass. Thank you for being. Wholeness and balanced vibrations.